Once upon a time, millions of years ago, there lived two friends, plants and insects. The plant had beautiful red apples and juicy green leaves that looked like a tasty treat to his insect friend. And so the battle began. The plant would increase its defenses, such as chemicals, to attract natural predators to eat his insect foe. Some generations later, insects were able to suppress these defenses to avoid being eaten. This story continues for many generations, even all the way to present day. The phenomenon of species simultaneously evolving to outcompete each other is known as coevolution, and is very typical between hosts and parasites. Meet Hannah. She is an Asian citrus psyllid, which is a type of insect, and her species, Hemiptera lividae, has been studied extensively. Studies show that Hannah lays her babies in newly formed leaves. Her babies then suck on sweet juices of these leaves, causing these indentations you may have noticed in leaves around your garden. These indentations are galls, which indicate a plant has been infected by a parasite such as Hannah. Remember our coevolution story from earlier? Well, Hannah's babies have been found to suppress plant chemical defenses, leaving them defenseless to other plant-eating insects. Well, what about Tracy, Hannah's Australian cousin? Tracy is a pimple psyllid, and her effect on native plants has never been studied before. Behind me, I have some really beautiful Magenta Lilly Pilly plants, which are an endangered species. The Australian government has developed a plan to protect wild populations of this species, but they've overlooked one really crucial thing. They haven't considered Tracy and the impact that she may have on these species, which represents a really crucial gap in our knowledge. So the research that my lab assistant and I are doing is to determine the impact of these psyllids on Magenta Lilly Pillies. Our prediction is that Tracy would hold a similar effect to Hannah and be able to suppress these plants' chemical defenses. A reduction in plant chemical defenses means that the lily pillies will be more susceptible to being eaten by other insects, which means that the herbivory rate will increase. To test this, I collected 250 leaf samples. Only half of these were infected with galls, indicating psyllid babies lived there. I then used the LeafBite smartphone application to measure the percentage of leaf eaten in the two groups and analysed this data. So what were the results? We found that branches that were infected by galls tended to experience higher rates of herbivory. So this may mean that Magenta Lilly Pillies that are infected by Tracy's species are more likely to be eaten by other insects. So at the moment, we're unable to determine if Tracy is able to suppress chemical defenses like Hannah is, but this is a really great start. By strengthening our understanding of the coevolution between these two species, the Department of Environment may be able to revise and strengthen their conservation strategy. By benefiting the conservation strategy of the Magenta Lilly Pilly, this also broadly benefits Australian communities as the plant holds an ecological, historical and cultural significance. These plants provide a yearly supply of pollen for native honeybees and insects. These plants also reside in rainforests along eastern Australia, and their berries and shelter provide food and habitat for birds and flying foxes. Local Aboriginal communities also use these delicious berries for bush tucker. This was even noticed by Sir Joseph Banks, as lily pillies were historically one of the first plants he noticed in his journal in 1770. So the next time that you're walking around in your garden and you notice these bumps on your leaves, remember the million-year story of coevolution.